Okay, I think I actually did it without messing something up. So we are now being recorded. So the way that this will happen right now to start with is that according to our charter, since this is a new committee, according to the charter, the first named council member chairs the meeting to start with. And what that means is, as you all saw last night, the committee assignments for Economic Development Committee lists the 8 of you. And Mr. Brost, Councilmember Brost, is the first named council member. So Councilmember Brost is going to start it off. What he will do is call the meeting to order. Then he will ask Michelle for a roll call. Michelle, by the way, for those of you that are new to the committee, Michelle is helping us out here. Carla Patrick is normally the meeting recorder for the Economic Development Committee, but she's on vacation this week. So Michelle has graciously agreed to work a little OT, and she will be taking the minutes and so forth. So Michelle will, she will then do a roll call. Then we'll go back to Councilmember Brost, who then first order of business will be to take nominations for the chair. And however that long takes, if there's one nomination or more, you all will vote. And then the person who is then named chair will then chair the rest of this meeting. So everybody good with that? So having said that, then I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Brost.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cross. It's my honor. I guess, Michelle, would you like to take roll, please?
Yes, I would. Good evening. Here's a roll call. Councilmember Brost.
Here.
Councilmember Bartoni.
Here.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon. Here. Councilmember Jaxie.
Here.
And Councilmember Hopper.
Here.
And Councilmember Garetano.
Here.
Okay. We have also present City Administrator Steve Cross. And I'm Michelle, your meeting reporter.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. And I guess at this point, we'll open the floor up for anyone wishing to nominate someone or offer to be the committee chair.
I mean, I don't mean to speak out of turn, but if I'm not, I would like to nominate Mr. Ottenberg to chair the committee.
Yep. And Mr. Councilmember Brost, I would like to second that.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Okay, not hearing any, we'll close the nominations. I guess, Steve, do we still take a vote?
You can do a voice vote. Well, I'll tell you what, just for the record, let's do a roll call. It's probably overkill, but let's just do it just for the record since it's the chair.
Yeah, I think we do
Okay.
need to do a roll call.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, Michelle?
Okay. So Councilmember Brost.
Yes.
And Councilmember Bartoni.
Yes.
Councilmember Ottenberg.
What's appropriate for me to say here? Do I abstain or do I vote yes?
You can vote for
Yeah.
yourself.
I'll vote
Okay.
yes. Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Dodwell.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Councilmember Jaxie. Is
Yes.
that a yes? Okay. Councilmember Hopper.
Yes.
Councilmember Garetano.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your support. I appreciate it. Like I told you all when I spoke with you over the last couple of days, I don't come into this with any preconceived notions regarding what we should be doing. I don't have any agenda that I'm trying to push forward. I think amongst all of us, we all have some great ideas, and I just appreciate the opportunity to work as kind of your servant, actually, or coordinator, to channel all the great ideas that we're going to come up with into a strategy that works for the city and for the residents. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. And so I guess moving along here, our first order of business would be to consider approval of the minutes from the, let's see here. I guess this would be the March 22nd meeting. Does anyone have any questions on the minutes? That Mr. Garitano.
Yes, I'll make a motion though for approval of the minutes.
Super.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Dodwell. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
I'll abstain.
Okay. 2 abstentions. Minutes approved. Thank you very much. Now, one of the things I might add is, since this is the first meeting with our new committee lineup, we're going to be relying heavily on Mr. Cross for some of his perspective on some of the items that will be on the agenda tonight. So, Mr. Cross, thank you in advance for all the help you're going to give us tonight. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr.
So,
I'll do my best.
public comments. I don't think there's any public comment. tonight.
We have three individuals that are attending this meeting. We have Councilmember Edens. We have Assistant Director of Planning, Melanie Ripito, and
Okay.
Councilmember Clark. And I noticed that Councilmember Edens has her hand raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, super. Then
So
can we
if
bring
you
her
like,
in?
I can promote her to panelist. Apparently she would like to speak during public comment. So with your permission, I will move her over.
Absolutely, please do.
All right.
Hey, congratulations, Scott.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
It was a real nail biter with all the nominations from the floor. But I won't take up very much time. I just had a couple comments about a couple things on the agenda, and then I have a lot more information that didn't go into the Ready for Action printout. So if you would like, it might be more appropriate for me to add that when you discuss the potential movie theater festival, or I can do it now. That's really at your discretion.
Maybe at the discussion of each appropriate item.
Okay.
Feel free to
Well,
raise your hand and we'll
If
bring
it's
you in.
okay, if it's okay with you, I'll just make 2 other comments, because after that, I'm just going to bounce and let you guys have your meeting.
Okay,
That'll
perfect.
keep me from staying on the whole thing. 'Cause
Sure.
I don't need to micromanage you. You guys have this. But I was going to say it was supposed to be on the agenda, but didn't make it on there. But there is a link to the Economic Development Guide that if you are new to the committee and you've never read it, take the time to peruse that old Economic Development Guide. It does a really great job of going through the history of how the committee started, how the position developed, and what the economy was like in terms of strengths and weaknesses that the city had and at the region when the report was written. And keeping in mind that whoever is kind of hired to replace the manager at whatever level, the expectation was that they would be redoing the guide. So you will have to read it at some point anyway. I think it's just more helpful to have the knowledge now than later. We also had a summary of committee activities, and it still needs to be updated, but it's exactly in line with what Councilmember Ottenberg was talking about, sort of being a conduit to good ideas. And so I think it's always important to not reinvent the wheel every time there's a new committee and keep talking about the same things. So one of the things that you could update is, move the lawn and garden summit to, finished rather than on hold. And then under ongoing would be what we voted on last month, for those of you that were not at the meeting, was the St. Louis Green Business Challenge. So you'll want to add that to the list. But it gives you a good idea of things that have been talked about over the years, but maybe were not acted on because of budget, or maybe it was not a great idea or just not fully fleshed. That way you can always continue to build on it. And that's it, other than on the film festival. So I can hold my horses for a little bit until you introduce that topic, and then that's it.
Well, so is that the end of the public comments? Steve, is there anyone else that has any public comments?
I see no other raised hands. If there's anybody else who would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. And if not, Mr. Chair, I'm not seeing any, so I think that's the end of public comments.
Okay, so that takes us into discussion items. The first one being the B&B Theater Movie Festival proposal. I've had a chance to take a look at it, but some of the newer members of the committee may not have had a chance to take a look at it. So Councilmember Edens, if you would be kind enough to give us your perspective on this proposal and the background behind it and why we are considering it tonight.
Sure. Well, the impetus was a couple of years ago, not a couple of years ago, about a year ago, we added a film festival at Councilmember Remy's suggestion to the strategic goals under economic development. And then because of other things in the process, or maybe we felt like it wasn't feasible, it wasn't something we discussed having action on. And the reason why I brought it forward was because it felt like the idea became more time sensitive. City Administrator Cross mentioned at an Admin and Public Works meeting that the movie theater is really, really struggling. So if this is something that you're interested in, you know, you would want to make sure that if you scheduled something that it's still in business or not under new management or anything like that. The other issue with holding like a traditional film festival is, you know, in terms of who's actually sponsoring the film festival, and then whether or not it has another competing film festival that's already in existence. So there are already international film festivals in Missouri and in the St. Louis area. One of them, Cinema St. Louis, runs, and I provided their link. True False Film Festival is another example of one that already exists. And so when I thought about what would be appropriate for a small town and that doesn't already exist, I thought about the biggest movie industry in the world in terms of production and wondered why there wasn't one in the area. And what I wanted to share with you tonight was about a conversation I had with an individual at Cinema St. Louis before I type this up, because if you do want to consider it, there's some things you probably should be aware of first. And one is that there are two different ways that film festivals get organized. So one is when a third party comes in and runs it. So that would be a nonprofit, or that would be a city sponsoring it. When that happens, the cities or the third party are responsible for booking. So they're essentially buying the rights to the movies, they're doing the ticket sales, and they're leasing the space from the theater, and the theater's making money in addition on the concession stands. But because we didn't budget that, and that wasn't part of the original plan, and this could be more time sensitive, that's not what I suggested tonight. So what I'm suggesting would be working directly with theater management. Now, movie theaters themselves have employees that are at national level for chains, and their job is to buy rights to movies. And what I learned from my conversation is sometimes that's $300 a movie, and sometimes that's a percentage of ticket sales, and it really depends. So if you do something that reaches out to the Asian community like Bollywood films, one of the barriers is that the films need to have an American distributor. And a lot of them do, because it's a very big industry. But also, Bollywood is not all-encompassing of Indian movies, right? There's movies in other languages as well that have different production methods, and they also use different equipment to play. Think of it like an adapter when you go to Europe and you have an outlet. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't already work. So I myself have been to Bollywood-style films at the AMC Theater in Chesterfield. So I already know that there's a market and that there are, you know, buyers that are able to buy movie rights and put something like this on. The other thing is you know, you don't have to have panel discussions for anything like this. I was just thinking of ways that could be a draw it would keep somebody from saying, but I can watch this on my house, on my couch. So it has to be, kind of a special event. The other thing that I learned for why perhaps there already isn't a Bollywood style program in the St. Louis area is because of the way that media is consumed by that particular population. So what I learned is that oftentimes movies may have already been seen before they theoretically should be able to be seen. There's another concept called four-walling it, which was a phrase I learned, which is when, somebody kind of rents a space and projects the movie themselves. And so that's kind of already going on. There's this, really large consumer culture that's existing. It's just not necessarily in the mainstream. So what you would want to do if you choose this avenue, from my conversation with Cinema St. Louis, is that you would want to immediately involve community stakeholders. So whether you get that from the New Temples, whether you get that from another organization, that's up to you guys, but let them help pick the movies that they would want to go see, because they're going to know kind of what they've already seen. If the theater would choose to work in food, they would want to upcharge that as part of ticket sales, right? Because they would want to compensate for any loss in concessions. Now, another idea in the complete and total opposite direction, I didn't type it up, was you could always do something, let's say the international buying of the movies isn't going to work out with somebody on staff at B&B, but B&B has also had movie nights where they show classic movies. There's a very easy transition to something like a Route 66 movie festival that celebrates other things that we're currently trying to do. I can think of lots of movies that people might come out and see that would be themed around something cute that the city really likes as well. So if you don't like the Bollywood idea, keep in mind that there are other ways to do it. But Cinema St. Louis does not have in the budget to sponsor anything like this. So it's really about, can the theater make a profit on this and fill seats? And
at this point in time, we haven't had any conversations with theater management about doing something.
I didn't do any of that. This is only,
okay.
This is just, I called Cinema St. Louis to see if this idea made sense.
Okay.
And if they had any money available before I wrote it up. The next step, great question, Chair Ottenberg. The next step that you guys would take would be to contact the theater and determine who is on staff that could help with that. I was a little bit more surprised to learn that it may be harder to find a lot of film clubs. I guess they don't exist anymore, and a lot of social groups. I knew TCM canceled Backlot. There's also not an expert on staff that does that type of movie at Cinema St. Louis. That there are other people that could do introductions, and you don't have to use the black and white ones like I suggested. I am such a nerd. I have personally seen Hindi films that are in black and white from the 1930s, but that's just me. So finding an expert, may be difficult on that level. So maybe somebody that just does more generic studies.
All right.
Anything. So
all right, great.
There's no other questions I can answer. Then
all right.
I'm done.
Councilmember Eden, thank you very much for the input. We appreciate it. Thanks for bringing us up to speed. Mr. Cross, you and I spoke briefly this morning about this proposal, and I think you mentioned a brief conversation that you had with the theater manager. Did this topic come up at all in your conversation with the theater manager?
Mr. Chair, excuse me, I'm sorry. No, I will again reiterate the conversation I had with Ed Cohn, Mr. Cohn. This took place on a Saturday recently, and the conversation, and I mentioned this at the Edmond PW meeting. The conversation had to do with electric vehicle charging station, perhaps in his back parking lot.
Okay, that's right.
That could be a perfect place to put that. He said that's a great idea. However, he goes, right now I'm just working to keep the theater open. And then went on to explain all the changes that have occurred in the movie industry. People aren't attending movies and that sort of thing. So, and trying to get federal funding. So he just mentioned, how difficult it is right now. And we've all seen it where a lot of people aren't going to movies anymore. So I've seen actually somewhat of a resurgence when I leave here at night. I've seen a lot more cars at the theater. So I'm very, very happy to see that. But he was complaining that Hollywood just isn't making movies anymore, and people weren't going. They can stream them and they have other options and so forth. But something like this, and certainly we want to be careful. I mean, Mr. Cohen's a proud man, and he didn't bring up any needing any help or anything like that. And we certainly want to be careful that and be consistent. If we have to be careful how we help our resident or our businesses, and because you do it for one, you have to do it for all. But
Right.
to answer your question, no, sir, this did not come up.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments? Joe?
All right, well, yes, I have some comments here. So, and Scott, thanks for offering to be chair of the committee here. So I'm sure you're going to do a great job. And to Councilmember Edens, I always love the ideas that you bring to the table, very creative. And so my first question was, yes, have we had any specific conversation with the theater relative to this? And, and just really to understand, the remark that was made to Steve Cross. But I think the question I would go next is what would prevent the theater from doing this already? Like, why would they even need the city to do this? I think they have the resources, the ability to do it. The other item I'm just thinking about is a little bit of the optics about a business. You certainly don't want to show all your cards. And if you're not doing good, sometimes that could spiral even further down. So I wonder how that would be perceived. But the only concern I have that I saw when I read this was really using public funds, city government resources for the benefit or the direct benefit of just really one business. And, I think we might have maybe even some legal questions there, because it's not like we're talking about a general business community expense. I mean, it's specifically, you're basically putting money down for one business to benefit. And I wonder if that could present maybe some questions that we need to get addressed if we were to go down the path, because the other thing is to the precedent, all of a sudden, then you may have a restaurant that comes to you and says, well, I'm not doing good. I want you to do the same. And we have competition amongst restaurants. And so how do you respond to that? So just some thoughts there. I mean, the idea is great, but I think that if the theater is looking for ideas, this might be one that, hand it to them and let them run with it and choose it. They have the facility, they have the resources. We would do probably what we could already do, which is help publicize it, through the city's newsletter and other means. But I'm, got some questions there that I think we just have to be cautious about. And I think that's where the city attorney might have to provide an opinion if we're too selective about business, putting money down for business. So those are my thoughts. So at this point right now, I mean, I saw it and it's my first meeting. So I don't, when I first saw it, I'm like, I don't know if we're ready for action for this yet. So I won't put the motion down, but maybe it's worthy of a postponement or something like that until, we can revisit, I think, as a committee, what we decide we want to focus on. Those are my comments.
Sure. Yeah. Joe. Thank you. Katie's up next, but before I ask Katie for her input, I just want to mention to everybody that I tend to be a very informal person. So please forgive me if I don't refer to you as council member when calling on you. I'll probably say Mr. or Ms. or even talk to you or call you by your first name. If anyone objects to that, please let me know. All right, Katie, please.
You'll never offend me, especially if you don't forget to call me to dinner. I was wondering if it might not be possible for our new committee chair, and I'd volunteer myself, to just do a reach out site visit to B&B Theater I know Mr. Cross has 20 other things to do. We do not have an economic development manager in place yet that would normally be reaching out to all of these businesses during this time. And I applaud Mr. Cross for the work he has been doing. But I think before we take this down the road anywhere is just approaching them and indicating that we have heard some rumors. We just wanted to make sure that they weren't true, number one. And number two, how are things going with you? Those are the types of conversations Julian used to have with many of the business people on a regular basis was, what kinds of things are going on in your world that the city may not be able to directly help with, but I know the economic development manager was able to provide some resources and some guidance on how to help different businesses. So I don't know if it's worth a conversation, but I always get a little concerned about hearsay through third parties, fourth parties, fifth parties. And so if we are concerned about their viability, and I think we should be, because that brings individuals into town center to go to the restaurants, to go to Walgreens, to stop at Deerberg's and grab something on the way home, those kinds of things, to eat an ice cream after a movie. We need to keep that engine running in the middle of town there. So I'd like to get some perspective from our local businessmen.
Okay.
So just an idea that if you wanted to schedule something with the ownership over there, just to discuss how things are going.
Sure. Okay. All right. Very good.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to respond to Ms. Dodwell and offer my services. As everyone knows, I've been wearing the economic development manager's hat now for a number of months. And in fact, I am reaching out to a lot of the businesses, and you'll hear some of the results of that when we get further along in the agenda. I'd like to offer, since the comment was made to me directly by Mr. Cohn, and again, as part of my responsibilities right now, I'm more than happy to reach out to Mr. Cohn and find out. And in fact, I can convey to him that it looks like, more folks are attending. How are things going? Is there anything we can do to help him? So it's something that I'm doing already. And I have more than 20 things on my plate, but I can certainly add another one just to make a phone call to him, and be happy to do that if the committee would like me to do that.
Steve, since you volunteered, we are more than happy to have you do that. Thank you.
I will do that. Thank you, sir.
No, I see a number of other hands up here. So Deb, I think I saw your hand next.
I agree with Mr. Garantano. And as part of my concern, I have several concerns to this. One is I don't know that we need to reach out to someone, a private business owner in the city, since he mentioned it in passing to Mr. Cross, but that doesn't mean he was asking for assistance. I think if he needs assistance, he should be the one to initiate that conversation. I don't think it is the city's place to initiate such a conversation because it is a private business. Our funds are public, and we should not spend public funds to enhance a private business or for any private purposes. And I agree with Mr. Garantano as well. I think maybe this should just be tabled at this point. And if Mr. Cross has another conversation that Mr. Cohn initiates, then we could bring it back up and discuss it.
All right, thank you. Rob, I think I saw your hand was next up.
Okay, just a brief comment. I actually disagree with Deb there and Joe. I do think if there's something we can do that we should look into doing it, but let me caveat that with it was my impression this idea originally came up from Mr. Remy, Councilmember Remy at the time, as an idea to bring a festival of sort to Wildwood. It wasn't to help a business out specifically. It was to bring some sort of a festival to Wildwood that would bring people in and support all of the businesses. So yes, it might be centered around, a movie theme or whatever, a film festival, but it wasn't, at least the original intent wasn't to help B&B specifically out. Now, if since that time period, B&B has articulated, that the movie industry as a whole is struggling, maybe they aren't specifically, and I don't think we should suggest that they are specifically necessarily, but the movie industry as a whole is hurting. I like Katie's word about, this is an engine in town center. Frankly, I think town center, part of the reason why I enjoy being on economic development is I think one of the things that Wildwood needs the most is attention on economic development. And it's why I think having a economic development manager is such an important position for us. I agree. I love your word, Katie. I think it is the engine of town center, at least one of them. And it would hurt us. I think it would hurt the city as a whole to see a business like that struggle. So if a festival that brings people to Wildwood from the surrounding areas helps everybody out, which I would anticipate it would, then I would support that. But I like the idea of engagement, whoever it be by. Mr. Cross or Katie and Scott, whoever, and find out, is the theater interested? I agree with you, Deb, though, that this is not something that we should spend public funds on to help a specific business out. It would be more directed, or I would be more supportive of something that is a festival that brings people into Wildwood generically. If it happens to be a film festival, great. You want to do a wine festival, I'm even more in. But whatever it happens to be, I do like the idea of just trying to find something that could help out B&B or with. All right. Thanks, Rob. So there's several more hands up here. Probably taking order of Katie, then Nathan, then I think Larry's been waiting for a while as well. Deb has one more comment, I believe. And then probably it's appropriate for us to take some action on this bill and decide what we're going to do with it, separate from possibly coming to a consensus, which maybe would require a motion on whether or not we should approach the movie theater. I guess my thought would be if we did approach the management of the movie theater, it would just be under the guise of normal visits that we're going to make to local businesses. Just ask them how they're doing. And, is there anything we can do to support their efforts here in the community? And, leave any thought of a film festival maybe out of the discussion at that point in time. So, Katie, I believe you're next.
I was just going to indicate that, yes, the impetus of the original discussion was doing some type of a film festival, again, to draw customers into the town center. And so anything that we can do to move along those lines, maybe one of the questions to B&B would be, have you guys ever thought about hosting a film festival or anything, and see whether that's even amenable to them? And if not a film festival, as Mr. Jaxie said, let's figure something else out to start drawing people into town center. We've all been in closets for so long. If we want to keep those businesses that are currently in town center, we need to give them some ways to make revenue, because during lunch hours, it's close to nothing. So I'm just trying to get creative here.
Thanks,
everybody
Katie.
else.
All right, good. Larry, I think you're next in line.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I guess, like specific to B&B, I would probably find myself agreeing with everybody. I think relating to a B&B, I would step back a little bit and look at it more as to, a question that could basically apply or benefit to almost any business in Wildwood. I think we need to sort of figure out something that would fit on one page that would just say, how can the city help any particular business? And a lot of times, if you're looking at a business plan, a marketing plan, an operations plan, whatever it might be, you have the same type elements regardless of the business. And I think with B&B, maybe we take the approach that it's sort of a case study for us to look at a scenario as to what are the 4 or 5 bullet points as to how we can help a business in Wildwood. And it's all driving traffic, it's revenue. And then my other point I'd like to suggest, since Mr. Cross is in such a volunteer mood tonight, and again, I'm kidding there, but I think we also, as a committee, and Steve, if this is appropriate for you, but I would like to maybe gain some insight as to what is the city's view of economic development. Where is the city's commitment? Whether, dollars or personnel, whatever it might be, where is it? And that's a big question. And then on a simple thing, and my wife and I were talking about this, but just one little action item that might relate to B&B and might relate to every business. But if we start out with a group of 16, and maybe we throw in a few other people like the mayor and Steve and other people, why don't we all start coming up with examples on how we use Wildwood businesses? Like on a weekly basis, everybody, and we just start with a small group, and then we just start to grow this. Because I'm a simple person, but it would be like, if we all go, like if we don't participate or support a Wildwood business in a given week, I think a good reason would be is that we're out of town. Other than that, why wouldn't each of us always have some engagement? And then we start communicating it, and perhaps it could develop into some type of a formal communication, maybe once Steve or the economic development person's there. But I think with B&B or other businesses, I mean, like I had the unfortunate pleasure of driving through North St. Louis and yesterday, and I'm going down and I'm seeing like, oh my gosh, all these empty buildings. What we have to be afraid of is that those are old, broken down, boarded up buildings. We might have some really good looking buildings that are empty. So I do think so to summarize, because I know I'm going way beyond B&B, but I would like to see what would be some type of a mission statement for economic development that we would all sort of buy into, because I just don't know where economic development fits in the priority. I mean, we don't dedicate much to it. And then maybe B&B could be a good case study for us to, I remember in college, we had small businesses where we selected one as a case study. We went out and tried to help that business. Maybe we put some emphasis on this, only to develop a template on how the city can help an individual business. And then I think we all need to start communicating as to how we support business. And then maybe that will spread in a very positive way to where we potentially get a following of 100, 200, 300 people, and everybody's talking about things.
Larry, that's all great input.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all that. And you're right. I think we do need to, take a look at refreshing our mission statement, that sort of thing. And that's probably something that will take at least probably 2 meetings, if not maybe 3, in order to accomplish. So yeah, I appreciate that. So a couple of hands that are up. Nathan, you've waited a long time, so please.
Oh, appreciate that. No problem. I think a couple things. I guess the first thing that I would say as I'm sitting here listening, and it's come up a couple times. Yeah, I definitely hope the owner of B&B is comfortable with this information getting out, because we're in a public venue talking about the nature of his business. So hopefully he isn't watching this and getting very, very upset that we're talking about it as if his business is closing down. Second, I would also think that, I guess my opinion is that it is the responsibility of this council to help support business in the city of Wildwood. No city can survive without flourishing businesses as a part of it. And right now we don't have that. You go into town center and there are a lot of empty buildings. And to say that it is not our responsibility to help in some way drive that, I think is very short-sighted. No offense to anyone in particular, but I just think that's I think it's a poor approach to it. But in regards to the B&B movie theater, yeah, I would say that I don't see any reason not to look at something like this as we would look at anything else. I think it's pulling a little bit of B2B as a specific focus of it out of the conversation as a whole, and say, hey, what is another festival that we can hold in town center that would draw attention, draw traffic? Granted, yes, they would have movies there and they would have an opportunity to sell some concessions, but maybe it's an opportunity for a lot of the other businesses to be involved in that as well. And they could have booths, they could, have places to sell food, sell whatever. I mean, it's an opportunity to draw traffic in. And I think any opportunity for us to draw attention and traffic to town center is valuable. And yeah, I think it falls squarely on our shoulders to help provide businesses with support in order to grow that part of the city.
All right, thank you, Nathan. We've got Deb and Joe, and then I think it's appropriate probably for us to take some type of action on this proposed legislation. So Deb, please.
So let me clarify something. I wasn't saying that we should not support businesses. What I'm saying is we should not use public funds to support a business. I mean, that's two different things. So what I think might be very important for us before we decide to adjust our goals and move forward is for us to look at some data. So what has been the outcome of other events that's similar to what we're talking about now? So like for instance, the Garden Summit. So, how many people participated? Was there any financial gain for any of the businesses that participated? What was the people who came? Did they actually go out and spend dollars in town center? So I think those are kinds of things that we need to look at, because if we're going to support our businesses in another way than providing funding, then we need to figure out what works and what doesn't work.
Absolutely.
So I think it would be helpful for us to do some kind of research. I hate to put anything else on you, Mr. Cross, but you might have more information about that than we do.
Mr. Cross, did you obtain the information? Because we had given everybody at the Garden Summit a survey, I believe, to complete, but I don't know what the due date, or don't recall what the due date was on their response back to us. Have we received any responses back from those vendors?
Ms. Dodwell, I would need to circle back with Joe and Melanie and see if we got some of those. We, the three of us, as well as Travis, had a conversation at the Lawn Garden Summit, and I in fact asked them to reach out to the vendors. Now, of course, so the revenues are going to the vendors themselves, so the city saw none of that. What we don't know, and which would be more difficult, would be to say the folks that came, did they then go over to El Maguey and have lunch, or did they, go someplace, or did they come to the listen to some of the presentations and then go? So I will circle back with them. I'll make a note and say, did we get feedback? Did they like it or what? It was a pretty targeted audience, as we all know. I don't know, I know what it cost. I tracked all the costs, but I don't know the other side of the ledger, if there was some sort of a financial benefit to the city. But I will look into that. Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah, just
Okay.
I'm figuring they would have tax dollars potentially that would come back to us.
Sure. Deb, go ahead, please.
So the other thing that crossed my mind is, maybe like B&B Theater and other businesses that haven't typically participated in the Wildwood celebration, maybe we could pull them in and have them be a part of the Wildwood celebration. And then I'm going to throw one other comment out there that I'm sure I'm going to get darts and arrows for, but I'm going to go ahead and do that anyway. I was one of the original council members that worked on the Economic Development Task Force. I think it's important. I think that, and then I also suggested that the task force become an Economic Development Committee. So I'm behind it 100%. But I think you also have to look at the fact that Wildwood and most of the people per other data collection that we've seen is a bedroom community. I think a lot of people that have moved to Wildwood didn't necessarily move here because they wanted businesses here. And we've got a lot of people who work during the day, so there's not enough traffic to support them in the middle of the day. And so I think we really need to, decide what kind of businesses would really drive residents to them. Because honestly, Wildwood's a bedroom community. And while there are a lot of people who really want to push economic development in Wildwood, there's also a lot of feedback that I get anyway that, that's not why they moved here. And I understand we do have businesses, we have a lot of empty storefronts, but I think we need to just deal with reality. That's why a lot of people didn't move here. So maybe we need to take a step back and reevaluate and look exactly how we go about promoting businesses without spending public money.
All right, thanks, Deb. So there's a couple people here that want to make some additional comments. So I guess I would ask that the comments be comments that are specific to the particular issue of this B&B theater proposal. And as long as they're new comments and fresh information, that's great. So Joe, I think you would be up next.
Yeah, sure. So just a couple items I want to cover related to the use of public money for private businesses. And the reason I bring that up is that several years ago, I learned that there is a state law that prohibits local municipalities from using public money on private property. And so, again, if it's broadened the scope of what we're discussing, then I think there's opportunities. It was mentioned that, about the idea that Council Remy, and I had many conversations with him, but that was, again, a very broader scope. It was more of a festival type of idea. The other thing too, and it was mentioned, is the need for data. And I love data, and I think it's important because I think sometimes we just assume, well, if we bring people in, this is economic development. Well, if we were to judge that and look at our events, then technically Celebrate Wildwood is your biggest economic development event that the city has because it brings in a large crowd, probably the biggest crowd we've got. And so as we look at data, and I think it's important that we establish baseline data and then periodically measure ourselves, especially when there is some type of event or function, we have to measure to see, did we make an impact to that baseline? Because otherwise then we're wasting our time and money and efforts. And so I think if we're going to reach out to businesses, I would ask them, when Celebrate Wildwood happens, we bring in lots of people, thousands of people. Does that impact your business? And I'm going to be very interested in learning that, because that will probably tell us, are we looking at, the right things for economic development? Is just bringing in people make a difference? Or do these people not spend money? Or do they just come for, does a business actually gain any new clients or customers? I think those are important measures we need to establish. And then I think too, every time we do an event, we really need to have, what is a measure, a goal, a target that we're going to shoot for? We just can't have an event and just say it's going to do something. I would like to see some kind of result, whether it is a 10% increase in new customers coming into businesses, that we would, again, get that data from various sources. But I think it's important for us to be able to measure ourselves and focus on those types of activities where we have the greatest benefit. So just two last things. What I would like to see this committee do is, I think first we need to spend some time revisiting what are our economic goals, and then really prioritize and simplify just those few activities so that we can set a realistic goal. Let's not try to boil the ocean with a bunch of stuff. We have limited resources available to us. And lastly, there was mention about promoting businesses. I love the idea. I just did a video this weekend from Lucky Dog Central, which is a new business on Manchester Road, and do pretty much a regular video or some type of promotion almost every other day online. And people do like it and they love it. And After I did that video, I had requests to do more videos. So, I've got some already teed up, but I think it's good if we demonstrate and lead and model by example ourselves to do that. And I think that would be key. So those are all my comments. I think enough's been said on it.
All right, thanks, Joe. So Don Bartoni is, I think, the only one who hasn't had a chance to comment yet tonight. So we're going to turn things over to him. And again, what I will ask is let's keep our comments specifically pertaining to this issue of the B&B movie theater and other things regarding talking about redoing our goals and strategic plans and that sort of thing. That's probably best kept for another time this evening, or else maybe at a future meeting. So Don, please.
Thank you, Scott. And yeah, I was kind of going to touch base a little bit on what you just said. I mean, we're 55 minutes into this, and half of the conversation has been about non-B&B. So let's try to stick to the agenda.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of great comments, and I don't disagree with any of them for the most part, but let's try to stick to the topic. If it's appropriate to call the question, I don't even know if we're voting on anything, but I think we've discussed this to ad nauseum. And like, there's no decisions going to be made here tonight. Let's just, let's investigate this a little bit more. Maybe the theater owner is not even interested in this.
Right.
So let's find out let's take his temperature and let's just see what's going for there. But
would you like to make a motion?
We've exhausted this.
Would you like to make a motion that we postpone?
I'll make the motion that we have City Administrator Cross reach out to B&B owners and appropriate personnel just to see if they are interested in this, and then ask them or try to come back with what the city can do to help facilitate this. I know we can't use city money to finance this, so to speak, but we do have events that we pay for, and maybe this could somehow or another, find its way there. But there's a lot of businesses in town center that could help sponsor this as well. So I would just, I'll make the motion that City Administrator Cross investigates this and see what our next step is, so to speak.
So should we, that would also involve delaying this then until a later date, taking action on this bill?
I don't know if we're delaying it. Just I'm making the motion for city administrator to come back at the next meeting with his findings.
No, okay. Mr. Jaxie, are you seconding the motion?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Are we following proper parliamentary procedure here, Steve?
Yes, you are, sir. So the next.
All those in favor of the motion then, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Point of, I'm not anybody, but point of order, you have to ask if there's any discussion on the motion.
Okay, then is there any discussion on the motion?
May I just say, if they come back and say they're not interested, that's totally okay. But don't forget, as a committee, you might then want to make the recommendation to take it off the strategic goal list, because right now it's a goal. And if you don't want to do it, there's no need for it to be a goal, because this existed before any issue with the movie theater. So I would just, you could make that part of the motion or do that at a later date, and that's it.
All right, very good. Okay, so I guess we need to go back then, because I'm not sure I heard the ayes and nays appropriately. So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Abstentions? Motion carries. All right, so it is now about 4 minutes until 7. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the, go through the rest of the items on the agenda, keeping our comments focused on each one of the items, and keeping in mind that it's probably going to take us 2 or 3 meetings before we formulate a strategic plan going forward. So the next item up for consideration would be an update from Mr. Cross on the North Point development.
Thank you, Mr.
Cross.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Given that it's now 7 o'clock, I will keep keep my comments short, these updates. I'm happy to answer any questions. But I will go through them quickly just to give you all an idea where with regards to North Point. We are still working with the North Point representatives. As I have said in my weekly reports to you all, there are we're approaching it from two different angles. Mr. Vunich is working with their planning folks in terms of a rezoning, a public hearing regarding the rezoning and that sort of thing. The bigger issue is what our city attorney, Mr. Young, and I are working on, having to do with abatement of taxes and abatement and using public funds for this and how that might go about. The short answer is that the mayor asks is what's in it for the city. And at this point, we have not been able to identify that. We just recently received a pro forma of what the representatives from North Point are saying is of value to the city. They seem to be quite aggressive in the numbers that they are showing that would be of value. So I am going through that now. And then Mr. Young and I will get together, and then we can come back to the mayor and to the council and say, this is kind of where we're at. But right now, there's not enough data to know if this thing's going to go or not go. Because right now we're having a hard time quantifying what the economic benefit is to the city.
Okay, very good. Don, you had your hand up. Was that just from before or?
Yes, that was from before. I took it down.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right, thank you. All right.
I have one
let's
question, Chair.
Go
related
ahead.
to the item on North Point, if I could ask a question. Mr. Cross, I learned there is another development that's being proposed on the Chesterfield side, just further up the road from where this proposed North Point is. Just want to make sure you're aware of it. It's called the Rise Commercial District. And apparently they had a public hearing on it at the Chesterfield Planning Commission. So it's really adjacent to where this is. So I'm just bringing it up in case there's a need for awareness, because that could impact some of the discussions that are happening right now, including the infrastructure needs that are needed for that road to make sure that it can handle what happens in that area. So that's all.
All right, thank you, Joe.
If I may, I'll just quickly.
Absolutely.
Mr. Garetano. Thank you, sir. Yes, we are aware of that. And certainly, the infrastructure, there will be a traffic study required of North Point. And in fact, the city of Chesterfield is going to require them to do a traffic study all the way from basically the North Point development all the way to Highway 40, because that will be the route the trucks will be taking, because they will not be allowed to go southbound on Etherton Road. And so they will be required to provide a complete traffic study. And there was a meeting about a month or so ago with the St. Louis County Department of Transportation, Chesterfield representatives, Wildwood representatives. So that is, and certainly in consideration, along with the folks that are in that area of having the church, the golf course, fixed supply, as well as the development that is being proposed to the city, which would be to the south of Fix, between the North Point development, the proposal, and Fix Supply. So there's a proposal for a business there as well. So yes, we are aware of it. And yes, that'll probably factor into all of this. But at the end of the day, Wildwood has to look at what is in it for Wildwood, if there's an economic generator there or not.
All right, thanks, Steve. Next will be an update, Steve, on the Missouri Main Street / Route 66 initiative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quickly, I think you all know that the big event is on Thursday. We had a couple stumbling blocks here over the last couple of days. Missouri Main Street was not going to be able to come, we had to do some shuffling. Then they said they are going to come. We were going to have to cancel the trolley. Now we don't have to cancel the trolley. So today I've had several conversations with Melanie Ripito and Robin. But fortunately, right now, everything's a go. You all have seen the invitation. You are certainly welcome to come. There's a full day of traveling on the trolley, really starting around 2:30 thereabouts. The Wildwood HPC is handling the narration of all of that. Then at 4:30 at Living Word Church is where the presentations will be made. The mayor is out of town. He left this morning. We'll be back on Thursday, but not in time to be there in person. However, we are going to record his remarks to the attendees. That will be done tomorrow morning. And so the mayor will be there through the magic of technology. I need to speak to Mark Harder, Councilman Mark Harder from St. Louis County. He said he will be there. So I need to confirm that tomorrow. But anyway, Ms. Ribito and Robin have done an unbelievable job pulling this together. Lots and lots of people, stakeholders, businesses, churches, schools, and then as you all saw in the invitation, then at 5:30, then for those who want to go to Big Chief, there's a wine tasting event going on, as well as the opportunity to purchase adult beverages and appetizers and that sort of thing. So big event on Thursday.
All right, thanks, Steve. Joe, did you have a comment or quick question?
No,
Okay,
I did not.
saw your hand
Sorry.
up. All right, sorry about that. All right, Steve, thank you. Update on business changes in Wildwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will just quickly go through the things that are happening right now in the businesses. So you all saw last evening that Thai Bistro, we had the public hearing for them to get their liquor license. So that's a big deal. That will help to bring some more business to Thai Bistro now that they'll be able to serve liquor. Micro Meadows, they're in by Deerbergs. Right now, they're looking at, they have their final inspection with St. Louis County this Thursday. Assuming all goes well, they're planning a soft opening on Monday, May the 2nd. But I need to work out details for a grand opening on May the 7th. That would be a Saturday. So I need to talk to the two councilmen, one of which is attending right here, as well as the mayor, Wildwood Business Association, and work those details out. But that's what they're looking, that's what they've asked me for May the 7th, and I need to work that out. The exercise coach, they're another new business that's opening up here in Town Center. He's still finishing up his final build out. He's looking to hopefully open on May the 18th with more of a grand opening sometime in June. But he would like to open his doors on May the 18th. In the old Pure by Jen space, you may have recall that I wrote in my one of my weekly reports a while back that a couple of folks want to open up a whiskey and cigar bar there, and a high-end whiskey and cigar bar. But they've run into some problems with the building owner, who is indicating that there are some issues with the smoke, even though the folks from that are trying to open up this business are putting in high-end smoke handling facilities and that sort of thing. They have looked at a couple other areas in town, as well as on Manchester Road, and those haven't panned out. I'm going to speak to the real estate agent, which is Intellica, and see if there's anything we can do to help them get over the hurdle with regards to the smoke issue. So that's a conversation I'm going to try to have with them tomorrow. And then lastly, Lucky Dog Central, which is on Manchester Road. They're looking at they're open now, as you know, but they're looking to try to do a grand opening on June the 2nd. And so I need to again coordinate with the council members and the mayor and WBA and see how that will work out. So we've got a lot happening. We got a lot of new businesses opening up. So I'm very happy with it. And they're all great people to work with. Really excited to do business with the city of Wildwood. So keep your fingers crossed that we can get over the last hurdles here and get these businesses open and serving the residents of Wildwood.
All right, super. Thank you, Steve. So I'm taking a look at the next couple of items that are up for discussion: the strategic plan sub-goals, the summary of committee activities, the guide to opening a new business, and the implementation matrix. And it's my suggestion that these 4 documents, that some of the newer members of the committee may not have had a chance yet to review these documents. And so unless anyone has a strong objection, I would suggest that we put discussion of these 4 items off until the next meeting so that everybody has a chance to review them. Several of the documents are quite extensive and in my mind, not necessarily user-friendly. And I tend to operate under the theory that, in fact, Steve and I were talking about it this morning, that our mayor operates under as well, which is that less is more, and these documents may be able to be slimmed down so that they become much more user-friendly and usable. So unless anyone objects, that would bring us then to the status of the open position. So Steve, would you like to update us on that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. And before doing that, if I may, I wanted to point out that the agenda, as you see it now, I was asked by the prior chair to put this agenda together and include those materials. Mr. Chair, you're absolutely right. I was not going to discuss any of them. They are quite lengthy. I think we're at a point now where this is an opportunity to, take a relook at some of these things. It was pointed out earlier that one of the items was not included on the agenda, which was the Economic Development Guide. That was intentional. I left that off simply because, again, to give this new committee, if you will, an opportunity to kind of figure out our direction. That's a guide that was put together back in 2016. It's now 5+ years old and required a 5-year update. But I didn't want to just drop that on this committee right now. It's something that there's a lot of information in there at this point, because I've had an outside consultant review it, not the consultant that helped prepare it back in 2016, but someone who sits or has sat in an economic development chair, take a look at it. I wanted an outside perspective. I think there's a lot of stuff that doesn't apply anymore. So I want to have a further conversation about how we want to handle updating that guide. That will ultimately be the first responsibility of the new economic development manager. But I left that off simply because there was just an awful lot on this agenda. So
no, Steve, that's perfect. And like I said, those documents, we can review those at our leisure between now and the next meeting, and then have a discussion about those documents at that point in time. So yeah, thank you. So that brings us up to the status of the open position.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, thank you. Just a real brief history for those of you who haven't served on the committee. When the previous economic development manager left the city, I reached out to the Economic Development Committee and asked for input in terms of what they would like to see. I provided my vision of what I saw that position. This was an opportunity to step back, take a look at what was being done, what was not being done, and how we better utilize that position to serve the city in total. And so I provided that vision to the mayor, city attorney, as well as the Economic Development Committee and multiple others to get support, if you will, or certainly make sure that the vision tracks with what we want to do in the city. So I took the input from the committee, the Economic Development Committee, and then built a job description. There's the posting on the website, as you all are aware. At this point, I have received 13 resumes. I have reviewed all of those resumes. There are 2 that are of interest to me, so I will be starting tomorrow scheduling interviews with them. So myself and my directors will be doing because I want to have multiple people, part of that. So we will take a look and see what we have. Hopefully we'll get more resumes than that. 13 is pretty small. As opposed to our superintendent of parks, we've got over 40 resumes for that, but it's a different job and we're getting all kinds of folks. But I've got a couple that look, actually there's 3 of interest because I had interviewed a person several months ago that I want to circle back with. So we've got some interest, and we'll just keep that process moving forward.
All right. Thanks, Steve, for the update. We wish you best of luck with those interviews, and hopefully we get a great candidate coming out of there. So that brings us up to several items which are not ready for action: review of city business, potential city to business newsletter, update to economic development guide. Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, sorry, Scott, to interrupt. Just real quick.
No, that's all right.
Steve, that's the first I'm hearing about the job listing being posted. Can you tell me where on the site to find it so I can check it out, please?
If you go on the website, it should be right at the bottom on a spotlight.
On a spotlight. Okay, I looked around, didn't see it, but I'll look some more. Thank you very much.
We actually,
Thanks, Rob.
there were two postings that you'll see, the one for the superintendent and one for the economic development / communications manager.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Yes, sir.
All right. So that brings us to other business news and updates. I will mention one thing. Our next meeting is scheduled for May 24th. And a couple of people have mentioned that they think the committee could benefit by having in-person meetings at City Hall. I'd just like to get a brief feel, maybe a show of hands on how many would be up for having an in-person meeting at City Hall. So I see Deb and Joe and Katie and Don and Nathan, you're good for that? Okay. Rob and Larry, what are your thoughts? You want to still try to come in by way of Zoom if we do it at City Hall, or are you good with an in-person meeting?
Well,
Sorry, go ahead, Larry.
no, I just think whenever we can feasibly do Zoom, I think it offers a lot of opportunity for people and flexibility. To me, one of the reasons I would not want to work for City of Wildwood is they have too many meetings. So I think whatever we can do to provide flexibility and ease the burden of meetings, we should look for. And I take the exception. The city council meeting, I think, is really good to be in person. But other than that, I really think we should try to be as efficient as possible. I actually talked to Steve about this. I understand if we have a meeting where we're part in the city and part in Zoom, it still puts a little bit more burden on the city. Burden is not good. It's just not good. So when there's an easier path, I think we need to take it. It doesn't mean that we don't always want to meet. The other thing I've thought about is that for people who, why don't we occasionally try to have a meeting at a business? And if there's 2 or 3 people that attend at the business and we all attend by Zoom, let's meet at a business. I'd be happy to go to a business and we can all dial in by Zoom and sit there and experience something. I think we need to be out and about. I don't want to put a burden on Mr. Cross and all the wonderful people at the city if we don't have to.
Okay.
We had just real quickly,
Go ahead, Katie.
we had a couple of meetings scheduled at businesses and before Julian left, and that worked out pretty nicely because we got to have the individual business owner sit down and participate in the meeting and share some of their perspectives with us. So we had planned on not only meeting at a restaurant, but meeting at a professional business and a retail business and things of that sort. But he left before we finished all of that, but that was a good idea.
Okay. Joe, I think you were waiting to make a comment.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I like the idea that Larry brought up about if we can do that. And I think if it's publicly posted and the place can accommodate attendees, then there's probably a good option. And I've always enjoyed it. Like we had a couple meetings a long time ago, it feels like, at the Old Pond School. It was a road show, and that's Old Pond School is a school, obviously city facility, so easy to manage that one. But I think if there's something that can be done, but we'd have to find a right venue that can accommodate that. That might be the challenge.
All right, very good. Mr. Cross.
So I just want to let the committee know in terms of our capabilities and so forth. So as you know, all of our meetings are hybrid, or a lot of our meetings are hybrid, and which means like the council meeting. So not only are we meeting in person, but we are also we're on Zoom and we're on YouTube. To accomplish that, that meeting has to be in the council chambers because that is the only place in City Hall that has the technology to be able to do that. I'm looking into trying to bring that technology into the community room, but that may cost a fair amount of money. So if we have an in-person meeting, it becomes a hybrid, and that means right now I have one person who is technically trained to run that meeting, and that's Travis. And right now, that's not even Travis's responsibility. He's our senior planner, and that means he's in the meantime. Now, Michelle has graciously offered to learn to do that so that the burden doesn't fall on Travis. As much as I appreciate Michelle doing that, I feel very, very badly. She has sat in on some training and ultimately, she would do that. But right now I have two people. I have one person in the planning department and one person in the public works department who would do that. I don't feel real good about that because I'm trying to lighten the load on everyone here, and get a better work-life balance. But that just goes to show you just how good the staff is here because they step up and they volunteer all the time. And Michelle is a prime example of that. So there's that. Now, if we start meeting off-site, I'm going to have to look into that because you talked about doing a Zoom and we can't Zoom. We don't have the tech, we can't do that. So if we're there, I don't know how we, because all our meetings are public now. And so I'm not sure how we do that. Because other people have to, they're watching this on YouTube and they're watching it on Zoom. So I'm not sure that we're capable of doing that. I may be missing something, but I see that as being somewhat problematic. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something here.
Okay.
You pull the camera back so you can see everybody, like we used to do in conference calls, video calls.
Everybody just dial in. Just the same thing it is right now.
Yeah.
So we're all sitting at a table, but we're looking at our computer.
No, yeah. Just keep it simple. We don't have to, you don't know where I'm at right now. I could be at Benedetto's having a margarita. So it doesn't matter. We could all be just separate there. I do not want to add complexity to anything.
No.
Okay, that's a burden. That takes away from our goal of advancing. I don't want to do that. So
that's a good point. Larry, what I'll do is I'll talk to Steve tomorrow about this, and then what we'll do is we'll get out with a message to everybody about what we're going to do going forward. So I think, Nathan, you had your hand up for a while.
Yeah, I was just going to say, kind of piggybacking a little bit on Councilmember Bro's comments of kind of keeping it simple, but the other thing of the convenience factor is, public participation. It's a lot easier for residents to be able to jump onto a Zoom call than it is to have to make time to go to City Hall. I'll say even for myself, I'm open to doing in person, but I really have to scramble for a 6 o'clock meeting to get out of the office, sit in traffic, try to burn my way back to Wildwood. I work, not everybody has the same issue. I work in Webster Groves though. So it's a haul for me to get back in time. So I'm sure there's a number of residents who have that same issue. So if we start moving to having an in-person meeting, and then it makes it more difficult for public participation. So I kind of, like I said, I agree with folks when we keep it simpler and have the option to do something that allows some flexibility. I think you kind of run with it.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Nathan. All right. So that, unless there's any other business coming up, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Oh, Don? Motion to adjourn?
I will make that motion to adjourn, yes.
Mr. Garitano seconds. So I believe it's non-debatable. So all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion carries. Next meeting, May 24th. We ran over tonight. Typically, my goal will be to get these meetings done within an hour. So We ran over it and I take responsibility for that. So with that, everybody have a good evening and have a great week.
Good job.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Bros, thank you for handling the duties this evening at the beginning. I very much appreciate that, sir.
Yes, Larry, thank you.
You get promoted, Larry. Good job.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night, all.
Good
Take
night.
care.